is the sharing economy an answer to a smarter city? So if we look at all the money that's being spent right now on things like Horizon 2020 and the past FP7 programs, there's millions of euros being spent on creating lighthouse cities or smart cities, right? And really, what is the key? We've done so much thinking. We've done so much with technology, but how we really engage the citizen. And does engaging the citizen mean sharing, or what's the key? So we've heard a lot about sharing today. So I just need to do a little housekeeping. So Robin, I know you have to catch a plane, don't you?
I'm looking. Okay, then. What is this pen over?
Well, so what I'd like to do. So
I think I'm here for the whole panel.
Okay, great. So the suggested structure is that each panelist take this question. They spend about 3 minutes answering the question in their own words, and then we'll sort of have a round table discussion, if you will. Maybe I'll try to ask some intelligent questions, and then we'll put it out for the audience. Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. I figure I'm so loud anyway, you see. Okay, so, right, so should we start with you on the end?
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay, so is this going to work? Yep, fantastic. All right, my name is Chris Field. I'm CMO at a new organisation called Yoti. We're a digital identity system, really, for individuals. So let anybody prove who they are just by showing their face. So no documents, no passwords, none of that sort of nonsense. Just take a picture and off you go. I think the question that I put was the collaborative economy, or the sharing economy, or whatever we want to call it, is awesome. And what it could do for the world is truly revolutionary, and we're seeing lots of people coming up with new ideas. I had two questions, really. One is, how do we turn this into a movement? So how do we get somebody who's using Airbnb for their accommodation to also use the likes of BlaBlaCar or Zipcar or WeFarm or any of these kind of things? How do they kind of go from one to the next? And my other one, and my kind of personal bugbear for obvious reasons, is really about building trust amongst the collaborative economy. So, and this moves outside of, I think, some of the sharing economy guys here, but also other kind of peer-to-peer networks. So, there's a huge rise in online dating and also on kind of online marketplaces and that sort of thing. So how do we, if we're taking out the company, and how do we build trust amongst ourselves? So we want to do stuff amongst peers. How can we be sure of how we do that? Yeah.
Okay. If I think about smart cities, for environmental reasons, when we talk about smart transportation, that's what we're seeing the rise of, and we'll see more of. With the future of autonomous vehicles, for me, I'm hoping is going to be a shared seat and a shared car, in which case we'll only need 10% of the cars that we have today, which will transform cities and access, because it'll be at the price of a transit pass. Whenever we talk about smart homes, that is me sharing my usage data with some platform that's going to do all the analysis work for me and tell me how to do a better job of turning lights on and off or water temperatures. And likewise, when we talk about smart cities, it is a sharing of data among all the users of the city, as we were talking about in Cork, and figuring out what's the best and most efficient path and use of resources. So in the larger sense of the word sharing, which is why I call it the collaborative economy, because I want to just get beyond stuff sharing between peers, but all sorts of assets shared not just between peers, but between people and companies, people and government, people to people. I'm deeply optimistic about what the potential is. Thank you.
Hi, for those who weren't here earlier, my name is Ali Clabman. I'm the founder of a social enterprise called LiftShare. We help people share cars mainly to get to work, mainly in the UK, but also around the world. We have about 1.4 million shared trips every month, and basically help people access opportunities and solving transport poverty. When I look at smart cities and whether the sharing economy is the answer to it, I don't think the sharing economy on its own, but I think sharing as a whole is. I think if you take London as an example and you look at where we are now, London's a pretty cool city. It's a global city. but it faces huge problems. It's got huge areas of poverty, it's got massive pollution issues, and it's pretty much on the verge of gridlock. Our pavements are full, our roads are full, but there is still huge latent capacity in empty seats in cars, for example. So where we are at the moment in London, it's okay, but it's on the edge of a crisis. And when something goes wrong, like several years ago when we had the London bombings, everything stops. I mean, it is literally on a knife edge as to being on crisis. If you take sharing out of London, so imagine if London didn't share now, it would be chaos. Roads would be gridlocked immediately, people not sharing houses, people not sharing office space. There would be a huge problem. And then you start putting more sharing back into the London economy. With very small changes, you can make big differences. Taking the road network, small changes, small reductions in the number of cars on the road have a disproportionate benefit in terms of the reduction in congestion on the roads. Same with office spaces, same with houses, same with everything. So I fundamentally believe that when you look at a city like London, which is growing ridiculously fast, it has no option unless it cracks sharing and really supports the sharing economy and sharing in its wider nature. It will grind to a halt and suffer massively. So I absolutely believe that the sharing economy and sharing wider is fundamental to the success of future cities.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wink Grieseman. I'm the initiator and co-founder of the Things Network. And the Things Network is a crowdsourced Internet of Things data network. What we do is, with our community, we build IoT infrastructure by placing gateways at our homes, which can connect things and sensors to the internet, and setting it open for everybody to use, and having a global network that connects them. This is actually a sharing economy for internet connectivity. So last week somebody told me, so your Things Network is like crowdsourcing for Internet of Things. What's very interesting is what's fundamentally different is that we're breaking the traditional ISP paradigm. We have a centralized organization that is in control of basically the entire internet infrastructure. Now you decentralizing it over a city or over a community, which makes it more resilient. It means a higher quality, and it is also more lean because you only have the network in places where you really need it. And it's quite a bold statement. Like, is it fundamental? Yes, I think it's in the fourth industrial revolution where we're heading at. It's a cornerstone together with all kinds of other things like artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data, etc. And of course there will always be centralized systems that always have value as well. And then I think I can relate to what you said about it's more like collaborative. Like businesses working together, consumer and businesses and governments, etc. So I think it's really a cornerstone and not so much something fundamental.
Great. Thank you, Pinky. Thanks, everybody. So I'm just going to ask a question, and then maybe that'll help everybody to think. So I really like what I heard about, questions about how do we build trust, and how do we, with all these smart things that we're doing, it's not just about smart cars or smart homes, but it's about the services that can be provided. It's about the engagement of people to people and cities to people. And then this sharing economy is about sharing locally. If you took sharing out of a big city like London, what happens? Would we really collapse? And I think you may be right, Ollie. We would. And Vinky, about the IoT. So I, as a computer scientist, I have it's deep to my heart. This whole notion of IoT, we think of at the International Energy Research Center, we think of the Internet of Energy things, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the questions that we've sort of been dealing with is so can we share without trust? And is there a benefit really for that? I mean, it's kind of a question of, I will share with you, but there's got to be some constraints to that share, right? I need to get a benefit, you need to get a benefit. Or do we just share purely altruistically? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
So just to get a bit into the context of what we're doing, so you place a gateway at your home, you supply IoT infrastructure within a radius of 2 to 3 miles around your home, and people and businesses are leveraging that network. And at the moment, it's really like this altruistic feel, is that this is how the internet was created, by creating private networks locally first and connecting them together as one big internet. And that's our the behavioral drive is there right now. And that sharing economy has something very romantic to it and something very enticing. And what somebody explained it to me like this is that when we're all baking the cake, we're having fun, but once we're slicing the cake, everybody wants a slice. And it's exactly where we are right now in our phases that people are going to use the network, and they're going to use it to make money. They're going to use it to gain something, to generate value, which is not something that's going to be shared commonly. And we're looking at systems to balance that, and that's where we are right now. And the trust we need to create there is we're looking at, for instance, making our own blockchain currency to balance out the giving and taking. We're looking at making a division between a community network and a commercial network, so like a more kind of freemium model. But at the moment, like really thinking a lot about it, and we're right in the moment of that challenge. And it's interesting to see that when we saw BlaBlaCar, that they only implemented their business model only like 6 years after they started. So it's never too late. And sometimes you need this commercial instance or a commercial type of organization to make sure there you have this balance in your community.
The trust thing is interesting. I mean, we set up in 1998, and really the word trust didn't really come across our radar until about 2009, when others started talking about it. And then it becomes as if trust is the only thing that matters. Well, we hadn't had feedback from our members saying about trust, and at that time we probably had about 300,000 members, so it wasn't something we fed back. And I questioned why that was the case. And I think it was predominantly because the way LiftShare grew was not through just an open free network, it was through communities. So we had schemes for councils, say for Devon or for Cornwall or for Norfolk. We had schemes for companies, we had schemes for schools, schemes for hospitals. And when people had something in common with them, they didn't know them, they didn't necessarily trust them, but they knew they had something in common with them. They shared a bond, and that overcame huge issues. So when we just had the LiftShare network, we struggled to get critical mass of people of journeys. We started working with Glastonbury, like 200 people going to Glastonbury. You don't know the person you're going to go with, but you know they're going to Glastonbury. You know they're going to be pretty cool, pretty open-minded. And we had amazing feedback from people who start sharing people from similar communities. So, yes, trust matters, but I just think there's something deeper than trust. I think sharing is in our nature, and we just need to do more of it. And when you share, as soon as you give something away to a complete stranger, you feel good, but you will generally get it back. Whether you get it back directly or pass it on, I mean, it always comes back to you. So I think trust is a part of it. I just don't think it's everything.
I'm glad I'm following Ali, because I agree that suddenly trust has become this gigantic number one issue. But if you think about all these companies start with unrated and unnoted individuals, and they get started and they reach a critical mass, and then we start talking about trust. So I feel like it's not trust is not a gating issue to sharing at all. But all of these, what I think of peer production, we always have to have people rated, because we have people who are not good producers and people that there's varying quality. And so ultimately the brand is trusted on the basis of the quality of the production. And so I was talking to BlaBlaCar's founder, and what struck him is that people trust BlaBlaCar more than they trust individuals. So they could ride with anybody, but they believe that BlaBlaCar is attracting only quality individuals, or they're rated, and so therefore they're trusting the company and then the individual second. So in any case, I feel like trust is important, but it's not a gating issue.
Can I use this one because it feels like it works a bit? Does this work any better? Or? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so my opinion is this, that sharing needs to be two-way in order to build that trust to a certain extent. So if I agree to share something with you, that kind of reciprocal matter that reciprocal notion helps build that trust. So if I'm going to share with you, driving in my car, and then you're going to do the same, that feels like it goes some way to starting to build the trust. Your comment just there, Robin, about the individual trusting the business, I get that, but I've been talking to a very large online marketplace recently, and they said their challenge is not with people not trusting them, but not trusting one another. And so their challenge is how can they do that? And it's only, unfortunately, the ratings and commentaries. Where they can do that, yeah. So where they can have that kind of rating and commentaries, but if they've got new people coming into the system, that doesn't necessarily work. And so their key kind of message was, how can we enable people to build trust amongst each other? I guess that's what I would say. But
very good. Thank you. So I have tons of questions, but I want to open it up to the audience. What do you guys, anybody got a question out here that you'd like to ask the panel? Either collectively or individually? Oh, there we go.
Hi, this is Andy from Network. I just wondered what the panel thinks of the impact of blockchain technology on the sharing economy and for smart cities. Things like Ethereum, for example, incredibly disrupt companies like Airbnb and Uber, which are centralized companies, and there's a great decentralized movement approaching. Might even, and I wonder what the panel thinks about that technology, how it's going to impact cities, and if it maybe even negates the need for everyone to live in cities in the future when there's much more decentralization involved. So the panel can answer that.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understood that question. So thank you for your question. I think it was about. Okay, right.
Yeah, so I think if you're talking about blockchain, you're talking about how to decentralize your platform in such a way you don't have a single point of control or a single point of failure. Again, that's what my experience from now is that's a really idealistic idea. But if you look at reality, a lot of people tend to focus on one brand. Just people love brands, just one thing that they are related to. And what I think that what we're doing is that the Things Network is I'm going to use this as well. So the Things Network is completely decentralized, but we have also like one instance of our decentralized architecture ourselves. And the trust is embedded then in that brand, just as you said. So people trust BlaBlaCar, they don't trust the decentralized network per se. So I think it's a great tool to give people the feeling that they have an open alternative. But in the end, they love to go to one platform, and and I think that's what I'm seeing right now.
That's a great question. What's interesting, if we think about the power dynamics of this Peers Inc. collaboration, is that the platform is really expensive to build, and he who finances the platform creates the rules of engagement. And that is the biggest challenge around this, and one of something that is bothering a lot of community activists and social entrepreneurs is this power that's given to the platforms. And I think, indeed, it's definitely a serious issue. But these platforms cost a ton of money to make. So I do see the blockchain as a potential, if the blockchain can get its act together, to make use of it simpler. So if I think of how the internet was before the World Wide Web, that's what I think we need on the blockchain. The blockchain itself is just too complicated for a whole bunch of people to interact with, and we need to simplify it and provide an opening. If that can happen, we can have these distributed platforms, collectively built, distributed platforms. But I do want to agree with this point that marketing is a huge piece around why we choose what we choose. And so open source things can succeed when they're well marketed and people know about them. So we can think of all sorts of free and open source software that is like that. But if I think about Uber, which is a company I have very mixed feelings about, the reason passengers use Uber is because they've heard of it. And so there's a bunch of open source blockchain-based competitors, and the drivers like it because they get a smaller reduction on the commission taken, but passengers have never heard of it. So I just point out that while I really love the blockchain for building platforms, marketing is sadly everything.
I would echo Robin's opinion on that. It's absolutely right, because the blockchain is probably very well known amongst all of us here in this room. I've had many people saying to me, why aren't you building kind of identities on the blockchain? I'm just saying, well, that's an interesting buzzword, and it's all great amongst readers of TechCrunch and beyond. But once we take it beyond that, who's actually going to go out there and market this? Who's going to take it to consumers and encourage people to do it? There may be something for somebody to do to allow people to use the blockchain and able to interact with all of these platforms as well. I don't know yet, but I think it's a really interesting area to explore.
Okay. Anybody else want to?
Let's have it.
No? Okay. Another question?
They're ready for lunch.
Okay, well, round of applause for all of our panellists. Thank you very much.